Now, I want to personally make it clear that when I talk about this, I'm not saying that this element is going to be in 007 First Light, but there is an element of IOI games like Hitman, and there is an element of modern single-player games that I think really cannot be in the new 007 First Light game from the perspective of not only a James Bond fan, but the perspective of someone who enjoys single-player gaming. And that's something I wanted to talk to you about today, which is a common staple now in the Hitman games created by IOI. And here's why we're talking about it. Because even though this is not just a reskinned Hitman game, the similarities are there in terms of going into missions and situations with different approaches, and even IOI has mentioned those similarities. It's not like they're hiding from it. It's not like they're hiding from the fact that there are going to be some commonalities between this new 007 James Bond game and the Hitman games that they are famous for. So we're going to talk about this for a couple minutes today because this one element I think could actually really sour a game for people that they've been waiting a long time for. But I do have a question of the day for you, which is, what is one thing that you really do want or really don't want in a new James Bond game? For me, the thing that I really don't want, because I made a video previously talking about the things I did want in one, is the idea of timed single-player content. And that is something that has, unfortunately, become very common in the Hitman franchise. Now, I don't really know why it went this way. I don't think it necessarily makes a bunch of extra money. I don't really get it, other than, I guess, to boost engagement numbers. But in general, in Hitman, there are now these things called elusive contracts. And when I say now, they have been part of the series for like 10 years. So some of you might already be thinking, oh, it's a staple of the series, who cares? It wasn't always. It was not always. You have to understand, Hitman games go back like 20 years. And these elusive contracts are essentially things that rotate in and out of the game. Sometimes they don't necessarily even come back at all. And they are contracts or missions that you go through where you are supposed to eliminate a target, and that target is limited time. And if you miss that timed window, unless it cycles back in a thing called the Elusive Contract Arcade, or the Elusive Arcade, essentially that content is just gone. Now, there are things that do preserve this content on PC, like there are programs and preservation efforts like Peacock, which try to remove the Hitman World of Assassination trilogy off of the servers, and essentially you play them locally instead of connecting to some server that IOI has. They do a good job of that, but even with that, it's not like every elusive contract is preserved, at least at the time I make this. And you might say, well, why is this a big deal? I mean, let's just say, for example, that they do something in 007 First Light like what they just did in Hitman recently with Le Chiffre, famous villain from Casino Royale, where they actually did a crossover celebrating reveal of 007 First Light. They did a crossover in Hitman where Agent 47 goes after Le Chiffre. That's now, that's over, right? That has ended. So let's say they do something like that in 007 First Light. You might say, well, who cares? Well, first off, this is a game that you have to understand people have been waiting for a very long time. I would argue since before the last big console James Bond game. I personally would argue that there have been many people waiting for a resurgence of really, really good James Bond games all the way back since something like 2003 with Everything or Nothing, kind of capping off an era that a lot of people loved with those games, or maybe 2005's From Russia with Love. But even if we give the credit to EA and Activision, both, because it kind of died with Activision with 2012's 007 Legends, and let's say someone loved that game. It was pretty much a mixed bag and a lot of people hated it, but let's say someone loved it. At best case scenario, your most patient James Bond fan has been waiting 14 years at the time that 007 First Light will come out, from 2012 to 2026, for a new game. That's not somebody you want to... That's... I guess it sounds like a threat, it's not, but that's just not somebody that you want to play with the emotions of. Somebody who loves this character, is really invested, really wants to play a game based on this character, especially one with the freedom that IOI tries to bake into their games. This is something that can work with their games, but even with that, I've seen complaints. I've seen complaints with Hitman fans. I mean, I'm one of them who thinks that you should not add you shouldn't add content to a single player game and then remove it. It should never be time-based. That's my genuine opinion. I think FOMO shit is really stupid, and I think most of the people who defend it have very little going on. Like, it's just digital trinkets, and it's dumb. Everybody should have access to the gameplay if they pay for the game. When you get into multiplayer games, then this becomes a discussion. I still think FOMO is dumb. I still think you should have opportunities to earn that stuff again if you miss it, personally. I mean, there's enlisted service people who play video games. There are a lot of people who are in school. There are a lot of people who are busy. I think just because somebody has a bunch of free time on their couch, I personally don't think that means they should be able to get stuff in a game they paid the same amount for as you, just because you didn't have time at that point. I think that's silly. I think that you should always be able to go back to a game and earn stuff, but that's my opinion. And even with multiplayer games, I personally feel that way. I just think it's a dumb system. I think it's used to increase engagement, and I think it's used to essentially try to cause spikes in player numbers to make the game look good later on after it should be quote unquote dead and people are not flocking to it as much because it's not new. That's the purpose of it. It's not actually give you better content. It's not actually to do something for the player. What it really is at its core too, as an art preservationist, is creating art to destroy it or to limit the access to it, which I think is fundamentally, this is maybe a bit hyperbolic or a bit extreme, but I think creating art to then purposely limit human interaction with that art is kind of against the human experience in general. I just think it's a shitty thing to do. So when we're looking at a single player game like 007 First Light, I'm not saying this is going to be in it, but it's something I've been thinking about recently is this needs to be a complete package. This needs to be a really good game, and especially for a start of a new Bond, because this is essentially a video game James Bond who is his own character. You can't be screwing with the people who have been waiting 14, maybe 15, maybe more years. You know, like if some of those people haven't enjoyed any of these games since like 2005, and then there was a gap from 2012 on with, I believe, one or two mobile game experiences in the middle there, which were not full console games. You really don't want to make those people not want to come back and not want to support you. Now, I'm also not going to say that young people are not fans of James Bond. There are plenty of younger fans. It spans generations. But I think, kind of like 007 himself points out, a lot of Bond fans really do appreciate the old way of doing things. You know, you have to understand that a lot of the video game Bond fans especially, they were fans of these games back when the full game was on the disc. Back when you paid for the game and you got all of it. Back when expansion packs weren't super common. Unless you want to throw out that clientele completely, I think you have to be really careful with this. Now, at the end of the day, do I have any say over what they do with this game? No. All I can do is speak from my experience and the things I enjoy and the things that I know a lot of the people who watch this channel enjoy. And I know that a lot of single player gamers especially don't put up with bullshit when it comes to those games. They don't like cycling content. They don't like limited FOMO single player crap. One of the reasons that a lot of people play single player is to avoid that from multiplayer games. And I say that as somebody with a Fortnite code. I always throw it out there. You guys help support me every month on that. I appreciate it so much. There is a place for games like this. But is it really with 007? And that's why I hope that this is not something that happens at all. I'm really hoping that IOI knows, hey, look, we can mess with our own character, Agent 47, in that way. There will be people who don't like it. Too bad, so sad for them, but it's our character. But Bond isn't. Bond is a character that is much bigger than one company. Bond is a character who has had a presence since the 60s. Bond is a character that, while it is not legally owned by the masses, there is emotional ownership of that character by a very large group of people. And that large group of people is much bigger than just new fans or old fans. It's massive. So anyway, I'm interested to hear your thoughts down below. I'm not really sure what people think of this. This is just my opinion. It's just really a ranting opinion piece, but it's something that I hope does not happen in this game, that I think could actually fundamentally ruin the experience for a lot of people. But your thoughts matter to me. I really do try to read as many of those comments as I can, and I appreciate you for leaving them. If you want to support this channel, like I said before, our Fortnite code helps us out a lot. We have our own store, cosmobunny.shop, as well, where we sell one-of-a-kind items for one-of-a-kind people like you. Coasters, keychains, trays, and more made out of recycled paper and resin. The recycled paper is from damaged books like comics, manga, magazines, and more, which we take and we turn into something new for your home, and then recycle the rest of that book. Also, as well, we do have another channel. Actually, we have several channels in the description down below. But I have a channel right now I've been working on, which is JayRPG, where I make videos on RPG games, and also we have Degenerate Plays, where we've been playing through games together podcast style. Hope to see you over there. Have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shui.